Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nation's Health and Human Services Secretary, testifying under oath and telling Congress and Americans, and I quote him, he said, "I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me." Today's hearing is coming just a few days after Kennedy also faced widespread criticism for going swimming with his grandchildren in a Washington, D.C. creek where swimming is not allowed due to high levels of fecal bacteria. Tom Foreman is out front.
The budget I'm presenting today supports these goals and reflects.
The Secretary of Health and Human Services jumped as a protest erupted behind him, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. squirmed a lot more amid sharp questions from lawmakers up front.
Are you planning to break the law by impounding congressionally appropriated funds?
Is health care a human right?
Way up in the clashes, drastic cuts to
The answer is no.
health care spending. The Secretary pushed back on claims.
Now, he can't say that because then people would, get upset. But is healthcare a human right? And the answer is no. Sorry to say that. You do not have the right to somebody else's work because you're born, right? Healthcare is derived from people that go to school, they're trying to do a job. That'd be this to say that plumbing is a human right. Is food a human right? No. Is it good that should everybody have it? Yes. But that's very different than saying that's a human right. And it's a big problem because what they're doing is they're propagandizing these children into believing that everything should be given to them. And the answer to that is no. You do not have the right. If healthcare is a human right, then you can essentially steal it, take it from someone, right? And we all know that shouldn't be the case. And if that was the case, just like in the many socialized systems across the world, you get a much lower quality, right? If the product or the good or the service is essentially supposed to be given to the entirety of the nation, then it degrades in its value, right? Because people don't want to do it as much. People, they're not going to strive for excellence if in the end someone's just going to come in and take their stuff.
They will have serious real-world consequences.
It's just not true. We weren't cutting thousands of scientists. We weren't cutting clinical trials.
When challenged about proposed reductions in Medicaid, which serves many low-income and disabled Americans, he recited the administration mantra: it's all about waste, fraud, and abuse.
There are 1 million people who are claiming Medicaid from multiple states. That's illegal. It's theft. These are the only cuts that are being made to Medicaid.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
He even leveled charges at his own National Institutes of Health.
We should have the cure for Alzheimer's today. We don't have it purely because of corruption at NIH.
However, the secretary struggled when confronted over rising measles cases in the U.S., topping 1,000 this year, and his continued reluctance to fully embrace life-saving vaccines.
Are you recommending the measles vaccine or not?
What I've said and what I said...
It doesn't sound like you are, if that's...
Are you going to let me answer? I am not going to just tell people everything is safe and effective if I know that there's issues.
And the head of the department responds...
And why is that a problem? So measles cases are rising. Here's my question. How many deaths have come about from measles, right? You have... a situation where somebody is lobbying an accusation like that the measles cases are rising, and perhaps they are. But are measles as deadly as they once were, when the vaccine was first implemented? Right. So it's great for a headline. It's great for a talking point. But what is the reality? If we can withstand these diseases and not be, killed by them, then you have to be given the full context of what it is you're taking. You're taking a vaccine that has these side effects. Okay, what is that? Am I willing to take on this virus that nowadays isn't deadly and forego the potential side effects of the vaccine? That's something that should be afforded to everyone. Everyone should have that choice. And they're just, the majority of the people that are handling RFK situation or consuming the RFK content. I don't want to say they're low information, but it's a very clickbaity community, right? They get drawn in by something like, he's not for vaccines and the measles outbreaks are springing throughout the country. But what's the nitty gritty of it is what's the death rate of whatever the disease is, and what is the potential side effects of the vaccines, right? Do those people know? I would have turned that around. I would have said, what are the potential side effects of the measles vaccine? Do you know? Do you know what they are? Because guess what? The majority of us don't know either. And that's a problem. If this vaccine is being forced upon children, we should know what the outcome is going to be. We should know what the side effects are going to be at the very least. And we should know, given this vaccine, given the virus, if the child actually gets the virus, what is the other outcome of that? Can he live through it? What are the long-term effects of getting measles the normal way? We got to know the information. Otherwise, how can we make an informed decision?
Responsible for improving the health of Americans, added this stunning statement.
I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
Kennedy, who went swimming with his grandkids.
Why is that such a crazy statement? Right? He's not there to give medical advice. He's there to hold accountable the medical institutions. Right? He's there to get the information to people that are desperately in need of this information. He's not a doctor. And even if he was a doctor, you still shouldn't take that. Why do you think people get second and third and fourth opinions on a situation? Because even in the world of quote unquote science, there isn't we don't rule by consensus, right? Just because there's a consensus on a particular issue, that doesn't mean that is correct. That doesn't mean that is true. That doesn't mean that the due diligence for that particular issue have been affected, right? You need the information, and then you can make the decision. Not the government, not RFK, not your doctor. You make the decision. You're given the information that is all the information that's out there, right, with no filter, and then you decide.
Kids in a contaminated D.C. creek this past weekend also took heat over his calls to remove fluoride from public drinking water, although it is known to prevent tooth decay.
But we better put a lot more money into dental education because we're going to need a whole lot more dentists.
At times, it was all too much for Kennedy.
So now, on this particular channel, I wonder if they're going to say the link that fluoride has to a drop in IQ, right? So those studies are out there. You can look them up. Fluoride is linked to a drop in IQ. So there's a correlation there. Is it a causation? I mean, I haven't read all the studies, but why, if we get fluoride in our toothpaste that we use every single day, why do we also have to ingest it and put it into our bodies, right? You're not supposed to swallow your toothpaste, right? You're supposed to, you brush your teeth and you spit it out, right? There's fluoride in the toothpaste. The majority of toothpaste. Most people don't even use fluoride toothpaste anymore. I don't, because of the information out there that it drops IQ. So I don't give it to my children, right? I have well water, so I don't have to worry about that. But these people in inner cities that are just getting this water pumped in, you're putting chemical inside of the water for the past God knows how many decades, and you have no idea what the hell it's doing. Okay, it may prevent against some tooth decay. If it's making you dumb on the other end, what would you rather have? And again, it comes down to information. I just want the information so that I can make a decision. I don't want you to tell me what I need to do. I want to say what I want to do after being informed.
Kennedy and the lawmakers too.
My time has expired.
Oh, well, then so has your legitimacy.
All right. I mean, just to give a sense of how contentious it was, Tom, there are a lot of lawmakers, though Democratic and Republican, who have been saying that cutting thousands of jobs at HHS will endanger the health of Americans and that will cost American lives. Did Kennedy answer those concerns, which are bipartisan?
He tried to, but he answered them badly by basically saying, I'm just going to tell you it's not going to have an effect. We'll keep all the studies going. Everything's going to be fine. But he offered no real details on that front. That's one reason why a lot of these lawmakers really jumped on him and said, yeah.
No, they jumped on him because it's partisan. Stop it. And this is why, nobody can watch this garbage anymore. They jumped on it because it's partisan, right? The blue-haired lady, whatever the hell her name is, right? She was, he pointed out, she's been talking about getting food dyes out of the food for the past 2 decades. And he did it in 3 months. And he said, give me some credit. You know, there are issues here that we can agree on, but you just want to beat him up because he went against you, right? He left the big Democratic Party, and now he's in a situation where he knows he can affect change. He can do the things that people need to get done, right? I mean, it's just a wild thing that this anchor would say something like that he answered them poorly. I didn't see, I mean, you know, the 30 seconds they showed, because again, with these programs, that's all you get. You get the spicy little clickbaits. You get the things that they want you to see. Very few people are going to go and watch the entire hour long, I think it's more than an hour long, discussion and Q&A that went back and forth. And there were some really good answers that he had. But, you know, that's not going to be highlighted on this channel.
Yeah, we've seen this act from the Trump administration. You say one thing, and the facts prove otherwise. And in this case, with possibly life or death consequences. Aaron?
Our health lead now takes us to Capitol Hill, where the Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., tried today to reassure lawmakers worried about the Trump administration's huge cuts to agencies like his and the National Institutes of Health.
If you appropriate the money to me, I'm going to spend that money.
We have appropriated, Mr.
Right,
Secretary.
then I'm going to spend it.
Then you're going to spend it. You're not going to cut $20 billion from the NIH.
The White House proposal is to do very, very large cuts at NIH.
Well, that is contrary to the money appropriated.
Ranking member.
Yes.
If Congress appropriates to me the money, I'm going to spend the money.
Kind of confusing there. CNN's Manu Raj is on Capitol Hill. So
It's not confusing. It's not confusing. What's confusing about that? He's the head of the agency. He has no say as to the money that's going into the agency. That's Congress. The White House says we should cut money and funding across the board. So he's saying, whatever you send me, I'm going to spend. Right? If you send me whatever money you send me, I'm not gonna get all this money and then say no, I'm not going to spend $10 billion of this. He's the head of the agency. He wants the agency to do the best it possibly can. He's going to take all the advantages that are afforded to him in that role to progress his department, his agency, the sector that he's working on. He'll use the money in a way he sees fit. But she's going at him as if he's the one that is going to be the one funding the agency, and that's not true. If the president's looking for cuts across the board, then that's what you have to do. You have to look for cuts. What are we just going to keep doing? We're going to keep spending ad nauseum up until what end?
So is money being spent or is it being cut?
It's being cut, Jake. There's no doubt about it. And that was one of the big points of contention throughout the course of 2 hearings today on Capitol Hill. In fact, that there have been outside estimates that have said that roughly $1.8 billion in NIH, National Institutes of Health, which is, of course, the largest research agency in the world, that $1.8 billion of that money has not gone out despite congressional appropriation. Remember, the Congress appropriates the money, and the executive branch is supposed to spend the money. And there's been the point of contention. Democrats actually say it's much higher. Bernie Sanders, who put out a report, his staff said $2.7 billion has not been spent by the administration. That figure has been disputed by the administration, but nevertheless, that
and that money's done great good in the past, right? I mean, what could go wrong with unlimitedly giving money to the NIH? I don't know. It's not like we had a global pandemic or anything like that. They were really on the ball when it came to that stuff and totally nipped that in the bud, right? As soon as we saw that a virus that we created that came from Wuhan, China, that was actually funded through the NIH, through other NGOs, goes out there. Gain of function research is done. Virus comes back, kills millions of people. Maybe they shouldn't get all that money, right? Maybe that's a problem. Maybe we take a second look and see what are we funding here? What's going on? So it's for research and development. Yeah, it researched and developed the virus that killed everybody.
But that was an argument all through the course of the day. There were other notable moments too, Jake, in this hearing, including about whether the U.S. is doing enough to combat the measles vaccine. RFK Jr. defended the U.S.'s action, said it was doing better than other countries. That prompted some pushback from Democrats. And there was this one notable moment. Congressman Mark Pocan, a Democrat from Madison, Wisconsin, asked RFK Jr. about if he were to decide now whether to vaccinate his children against the measles vaccine. Kennedy responded and said, quote, probably he would. He went on to say, my opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. And Jake, he also said, I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me. And that prompted some pushback, too, from Democrats who said, well, you're the nation's top public health official. They should take medical advice from you. But as you can see there, Kennedy trying to handle his anti-vaccine views rather delicately of sorts before the House and Senate. Jake.
Okay, Manu Raju, thanks so much. Also, during his testimony today, RFK Jr. called ultra-processed food, quote, a genocide on the American Indian, end quote. that is drastically shortening their lifespan. Kennedy's not alone in worrying about the impact of what we are eating. There's a brand new book exploring our complicated relationship with food. It's called Diet, Drugs, and Dopamine, The New Science of Achieving a Healthy Weight. And the author, physician, and former FDA Commissioner, Dr. David Kessler, joins us now. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, what they're going to do with this guy is that they're going to constantly just make him seem like a lunatic. And anybody that, you know, says otherwise is just, you know, they're going to say that they're propagandized, which in my opinion, Kennedy wants to give everyone the information that they need to make an informed decision. If you guys can subscribe, I really appreciate it. It really helps me out a lot. But again, more information is better. That's what everybody wants. Everyone just wants, nobody wants to sit down with somebody and just have them tell them what to do. Maybe you do. I don't think you should, because you're an adult and you should be allowed to make an informed decision. You should be allowed, if you want someone to make a decision for you, then that's fine too. But I just want the information so I can make the best decision for me and my family. Thank you guys a lot for coming out. Please like, share, and subscribe to the video if you can. I would really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot.